Palestinians have been killed in the border region in the last decade, not to mention hundreds more injured by the Israeli attacks. When internationals are with them, they do fire upon us, but they don't always injure internationals. They're a little bit more careful after having injured so many dedicated activists, including Tristan, of course. Nice to meet you, Tristan. But that said, they still do try to harass internationals and terrorize them to the point where, they're hoping that we won't accompany the farmers, and then they can get on with their brutal policy of maiming and murdering Palestinian farmers. But as activists, we would stay with the farmers, and when the shooting began, we would remain there. And in some instances, they would shoot for a period of minutes and stop. In other instances, they would shoot for half an hour, 40 minutes. The bullets whizzing past us. In one particular case, a farmer we were with was actually shot. We made the mistake of being too far ahead of him, and they just shot around us. So all this goes on a nearly daily basis. Defense for Children, excuse me, dry throat. Yes, please. It's well documented by Defense for Children International, Salem.
Sorry. They're getting water for you.
I'm dying here. Palestinian Center for Human Rights. And these are, thank you very much. Breaking the flow. These are part of the policies of not only attacking Palestinians, but rendering the land, sorry, I'm getting a cold or something, rendering the land uninhabited, and it's very fertile land, by the way. It was the breadbasket of Gaza. Now it's largely inaccessible. And not only that, but they're doing the same thing to the fishers, again by brutal means of heavy-duty machine gun fire on the fishers, who, under the Oslo Accords, have the right to access 20 miles off the coast, but due to the Israeli policies, are now only limited to 3 miles off the coast. So this is 15% of their water. There are very few fish there. The fish are found beyond 7 miles. So obviously the fishers are no longer able to eke a living as they used to, and they're no longer able to provide the fish on the markets as they used to. So this is then impacting on the society as a whole, because the fish no longer exist. In terms of poverty in Gaza, it's manufactured poverty. 80% of the population depends on food aid for their survival. The food aid is roughly just flour, sugar, oil. It is not produce, it is not nutritious, healthy food. So there's now an increase in diabetes and other food-related diseases like malnourishment and anemia. And again, this is preventable if Palestinians were able to farm and fish as they used to, and if the borders were open, because this is another element of the siege, is that exports have been banned for the last 7 years. So this is critically maiming the society. They used to export strawberries and citrus and furniture and clothing, etc., to nearby Arab markets and even to North American markets and European markets, and now they're exporting absolutely nothing. So this is obviously crippling the economy. And then on top of that, of course, you have the random wars Israel wages on Gaza, in which they not only murder people through various nefarious means, but they also intentionally destroy infrastructure, intentionally destroy schools and hospitals, and intentionally destroy businesses and farms. So again, this is adding to not only the collective misery, but the collective impoverishment. I was in Gaza when it was being attacked in December 2008 and 9, January 2009, and just, I'm sure you're all aware of the scenario of the attack, that prior to the attacks, the Israeli authorities closed the Erez crossing. We're not allowing foreign journalists in, and we're maintaining this narrative that they were mainly merely targeting Hamas terrorists, and I say terrorists between quotation marks. But in fact, the few of us that were in Gaza were trying very hard to combat that narrative, because what they were in fact doing was bombing everything feasibly possible to bomb, including mosques and schools and nurseries and marketplaces, etc. And I always do make a point of mentioning that Gaza doesn't have any bomb shelters. They don't have an iron dome defense system, and the people were locked within the borders of Gaza, not able to flee as they were being bombed every area of the strip. We volunteered with the Palestinian medics for two reasons. One, the Israeli army traditionally kills and kidnaps medics. In the case of Gaza, they just go for killing or maiming. And two medics had already been killed by that point. And the other reason being, of course, we wanted to be able to document the worst of the war crimes. And we did. By the end of it, we documented the use of white phosphorus repeatedly all over Gaza. And I think it's really important to stress, I know you're an educated crowd, that white phosphorus is a chemical weapon. and nobody has held Israel accountable for using chemical weapons.
Really?
Depleted uranium, Rochette bombs, dime. All of these were used on the civilians of Gaza. A medic I worked with one night was dead the next day when his ambulance, where he was standing at the end, was shelled with a dart bomb. His body was shredded and went into shock and died. By the end of the attack, 16 medics were killed, and obviously this is against international norms and law. But in addition to that, the Israelis, in some cases, bombed buildings where entire families had been put, like, for example, the Samuni family. In other cases, they shot people assassination style, including children. And of course, they destroyed as much of the infrastructure as they could. And just to reiterate, for example, in the border area, one family I met after the attacks told me how they had survived the majority of the attacks. On the very last day, when the army was pulling out, they came to their house, which was roughly a few hundred meters from the border, and basically said, get out, and then 5 minutes later the house was leveled by dynamite. So this is obviously not because the family posed any sort of security threat to the heavily armed Israeli army. It's obviously part of their many policies of basically a creeping genocide on Gaza. One other thing to note in terms of the genocidal nature of the Israeli policies is that they even concocted a document of how many calories Palestinians needed to survive but not quite starve. It's called the Red Lines document. Gisha, Israeli human rights group, had it revealed, or whatever, had the administration, I can't think of the word, but anyway, reel it. And it basically, yeah, they calculatedly decided what Palestinians could have to not quite starve. And then they halved it. So these are all genocidal policies meant to create, and it has created, immense suffering amongst the people in Gaza. And it's been going on for years. It's been going on at least since 2006 and longer. And I haven't even touched upon all the things. I know I don't have a whole lot of time, but Gaza is under also a manufactured electricity crisis. If they were allowed to have the industrial fuel, if Israel needed to run the power plant, if Israel allowed them to actually rebuild the power plant that Israel bombed in 2006, then Palestinians in Gaza would have adequate electricity, at least a lot more. They're at a 65% deficit right now. So this impacts on the individuals, it impacts on hospitals, universities, and it impacts on water, the ability to pump water to homes. It impacts on the ability to pump sewage into the sea, which they do, because the Israelis won't allow the construction materials in to rebuild and expand the sewage holding pools. So I guess the prevailing message is that this is all manufactured. This is all preventable, with the exception of the aquifer, which is greatly over-extracted, and according to the UN, by 2016 it will be unusable any longer. That is not an easy fix, but the rest of it is. Open the borders, allow Palestinians to export, allow them to import the things they need, stop bombing them, stop terrorizing them, take the drones and F-16s out of the skies, allow Palestinian fishers to access all the 20 nautical miles of their fishing waters, and allow Palestinian farmers to work on the land without being terrorized and shot at and maimed and killed. Thank you. Yeah, they killed 35,000 cattle in the war. They killed 1 million birds. Probably some rabbits.